I desperately need your honest opinion, because I genuinely don't know if I crossed a line or if my gut instinct saved me from the biggest mistake of my life. What started as a simple disagreement about our wedding guest list spiraled into the AITAH most devastating discovery that shattered everything I thought I knew about the man I was going to marry. By the time you hear the whole story, you'll understand why I had to make the most difficult decision of my life. But I need to know from you. Was I being a controlling, jealous fiancé, or was I protecting myself from something much darker? My name is Amanda. I'm 29 years old, and I work as a corporate lawyer for one of the top firms in Miami. I've always been someone who plans everything meticulously, whether it's a legal case or my personal life, which is probably why what happened to me was so completely shocking and devastating. For 5 years, I had been in what I believed was the most solid, loving relationship of my life with Ryan, a 33-year-old cardiologist who worked at one of the most prestigious hospitals in South Florida. Ryan was everything I thought I wanted in a life partner. He was incredibly intelligent, successful in his career, came from a good family, and seemed to share all my values about building a stable, committed relationship. We met during my second year of law school when I was studying at a coffee shop near the medical campus. He approached me with what I thought was genuine interest in getting to know me, not just a casual pickup attempt, and we ended up talking for hours about our career ambitions, our families, and our dreams for the future. Our relationship developed in what felt like a very natural, healthy way. Ryan was attentive without being clingy, supportive of my demanding career without being threatened by my success, and seemed genuinely excited about building a future together. He integrated seamlessly into my social circle, and my family absolutely loved him. My parents, who had always been somewhat skeptical of the men I dated, frequently commented on how perfect Ryan seemed for me and how happy they were that I had found someone so stable and committed. When Ryan proposed to me 14 months ago during a weekend trip to Key West, it felt like the natural progression of our relationship. He had planned this elaborate surprise proposal at sunset on the beach, with photographers hidden to capture the moment and a celebration dinner already arranged at my favorite restaurant. Everything about the proposal was thoughtful and romantic, and I was genuinely excited to start planning our wedding and our life together as husband and wife. The engagement period had been wonderful up until recently. We had chosen a beautiful venue overlooking Biscayne Bay, planned a ceremony that reflected both our personalities and backgrounds, and I was genuinely looking forward to becoming Mrs. Ryan Martinez. Ryan seemed equally enthusiastic about all the wedding preparations, involving himself in details that many men would consider tedious. He had opinions about flowers, cake flavors, and even the color scheme. Everything seemed absolutely perfect, which is exactly why what happened next caught me so completely off guard. The first sign that something was wrong appeared during what should have been a routine conversation about finalizing our guest list. We were sitting in our shared condo overlooking the Miami River on a Sunday afternoon, working through the final details of our wedding planning. Our venue could accommodate 200 guests, and we were trying to finalize our list of exactly who we wanted to share our special day with us. Ryan had been unusually quiet and somewhat tense during this entire process, occasionally suggesting we remove some of my law school friends or extended family members to make room for people he considered more important. I understood that we had limited space and difficult decisions had to be made, so I was willing to compromise on most things. But then Ryan brought up a name that made my stomach drop completely. He mentioned, with what seemed like forced casualness, that he absolutely had to make sure Charlotte, his ex-girlfriend from college and medical school, was included in our final guest list. He said this as if it was the most obvious thing in the world, as if inviting an ex-girlfriend to our wedding was completely normal and expected. I felt my entire body tense up when he said her name. In 5 years together, Ryan had mentioned Charlotte maybe 3 or 4 times total, always briefly and always in the context of ancient history that had no relevance to our current life. He had told me early in our relationship that he had dated someone seriously during medical school, but that it had been over for years and that they barely had any contact anymore. The way he was now insisting that she had to be at our wedding felt completely wrong and out of character. When I asked him to explain why inviting his ex-girlfriend to our wedding was so important to him, his response made even less sense and raised even more red flags. He claimed that Charlotte had become like a sister to him over the years, that their families had remained close even after their breakup, and that it would be incredibly awkward and hurtful not to include her in such an important milestone in his life. He acted as if I was being unreasonable for even questioning this decision. What made this conversation even more disturbing was Ryan's reaction when I expressed my discomfort and confusion about the whole situation. Instead of understanding my perspective or offering to discuss it calmly, he became defensive and almost angry with me. He accused me of being insecure and irrationally jealous, suggesting that my hesitation revealed some fundamental flaw in my character and my ability to trust him. He insisted that if I truly loved him and trusted our relationship, I would want the people who were important to him to be there, regardless of their romantic history together. The conversation ended with Ryan storming out of our condo, leaving me sitting alone with our half-finished guest list and a sick, anxious feeling in my stomach that something was very, very wrong with this entire situation. What's your gut reaction so far? Am I being unreasonable about not wanting his ex at our wedding? Or would you also be concerned if your fiancé was this insistent about it? Over the next several days, I couldn't shake the terrible feeling that Ryan's insistence on inviting Charlotte was about much more than just maintaining old friendships. His defensive, almost aggressive reaction had been so completely out of character for the man I thought I knew and loved, and I found myself lying awake at night replaying our conversation over and over, trying to understand what I was missing. Decided that I needed to understand more about Ryan's relationship history with Charlotte, not because I wanted to be controlling or unreasonably jealous, but because something deep in my gut was telling me that Ryan hadn't been entirely honest with me about their past together. I felt terrible about essentially investigating the man I was supposed to marry in 4 months, but I couldn't ignore the warning signals my instincts were sending me. I started with what I thought would be innocent, basic research. I looked up Charlotte on social media platforms, something I had never done before because I had never felt the need to investigate Ryan's past relationships. I had always trusted him completely and hadn't been the type of girlfriend who felt compelled to stalk ex-girlfriends online. What I discovered immediately contradicted several things Ryan had told me about their relationship. According to Charlotte's Facebook and Instagram profiles, she and Ryan had been in a serious, committed relationship for 8 years, not the casual college dating relationship that Ryan had described to me. 8 years is not some brief, insignificant romance. It's nearly a decade of shared life, future planning, and deep emotional connection. Even more concerning, based on the photos and posts I could see from her social media history, their relationship had ended only about 4 months before Ryan and I started dating, not the years earlier that he had claimed when we first got together. Spent hours going through Charlotte's social media history, feeling sick to my stomach as I discovered photo after photo that contradicted everything Ryan had told me about his past. There were pictures of Charlotte and Ryan together at family gatherings, medical school events, vacations to exotic locations, and celebrations that spanned nearly a decade of their lives together. In many of these photos, they looked incredibly happy, deeply in love, and very much like a couple who was planning to spend their lives together. But what really sent chills down my spine was realizing that some of these photos were taken at locations and events that Ryan had described to me completely differently. He had told me stories about medical school experiences, family vacations, and milestone moments in his life, but he had somehow edited Charlotte out of every single story. Places he had described as solo trips for personal growth were actually romantic getaways with his long-term girlfriend of 8 years. As I continued digging deeper into Charlotte's social media presence, I discovered something that made me realize just how extensively Ryan had lied to me about one of the most significant relationships of his entire adult life. This wasn't just about omitting a few details or downplaying the seriousness of an old relationship. This was systematic deception about fundamental facts of his personal history. The timeline of their relationship completely overlapped with almost every story Ryan had ever told me about his 20s and early 30s. Every anecdote about medical school, his residency, family holidays, professional achievements, and personal milestones had apparently included a serious, long-term girlfriend that he had somehow completely erased from every narrative he had ever shared with me. It was as if he had taken his entire life story and carefully edited out the most important person in it. But what made this discovery even more disturbing was realizing that Charlotte's social media activity showed she was still very much present in Ryan's current life. Her recent posts included photos taken at restaurants I recognized as places Ryan claimed to go for work dinners, events that looked suspiciously like the medical conferences Ryan attended regularly, and even casual photos that appeared to be taken in locations around Miami that Ryan frequented. I noticed that Charlotte had moved back to Miami approximately 8 months ago, based on her social media check-ins and posts about exploring her new neighborhood. This timeline coincided almost exactly with when Ryan had started displaying some subtle changes in behavior that I had attributed to wedding stress, being more secretive about his phone, working late more frequently, and being less available for spontaneous plans together. Looking more carefully at Charlotte's recent posts, I could see that she was clearly rebuilding her life in Miami, posting about new job opportunities, apartment hunting, and reconnecting with old friends. What was particularly concerning was that several of her posts included subtle references to spending time with people she didn't tag or identify, but who seemed to be very important to her current happiness and adjustment to being back in the Y city. I started paying closer attention to Ryan's behavior and schedule, and I noticed patterns that I had previously overlooked or dismissed. He had developed a habit of receiving text messages at unusual hours that he would quickly check and delete, and he had started taking his phone everywhere, even to the bathroom, which was completely new behavior for him. He had also started working late more frequently, attending professional events that he had never mentioned before, and being generally less available for the casual, spontaneous time together that had always been a cornerstone of our relationship. My growing suspicions led me to make a decision that I still question to this day, but that ultimately saved me from making the biggest mistake of my life. I decided to look through Ryan's phone and computer to see if I could find any evidence of ongoing contact with Charlotte. I knew his passcode because we had always been open with each other about our devices, back when I trusted him completely and had no reason to be suspicious about anything. What I found in Ryan's messages with Charlotte made me feel like my entire world was collapsing around me. They weren't just in occasional, casual contact as old friends who had remained on good terms. They were in constant daily contact, with the kind of intimate, emotional communication that you only have with someone who is still very much a central part of your life. Their text message history revealed that they had been in regular communication throughout my entire relationship with Ryan, and that the nature of their communication was far more intimate and emotionally connected than anything that could be explained as just friendship. Charlotte would send Ryan photos of herself, tell him how much she missed him, share details about her daily life, and make references to shared memories and inside jokes that clearly indicated ongoing emotional intimacy. Ryan responded to Charlotte's messages with equal intimacy and emotional investment. He told her regularly how much she meant to him, how happy he was that she was back in his life, and how much he looked forward to their time together. He shared details about his work, his family, and his feelings that he had never shared with me, and he responded to her photos and messages in ways that made it clear he was still very much emotionally and romantically invested in their relationship. But what made reading these messages truly devastating was discovering how they talked about me and our upcoming wedding. Charlotte referred to me as Ryan's rebound girlfriend who had overstayed her welcome, and Ryan never corrected her or defended our relationship. Instead, he complained about feeling trapped by our engagement, expressed doubts about whether he was making the right decision by marrying me, and even made jokes about how naive I was about their ongoing relationship. The messages revealed that Ryan had proposed to me not because he was genuinely excited about spending his life with me, but because he had been feeling pressure from his family and professional colleagues to settle down, and because Charlotte had been dating someone else at the time and was unavailable to him. Our entire engagement had been Ryan's attempt to prove to himself and others that he could move on from Charlotte, but he had never actually ended his emotional relationship with her. As I continued reading through months of messages between Ryan and Charlotte, I discovered that her return to Miami 8 months earlier had been specifically orchestrated to coincide with our engagement period. She had broken up with the man she had been dating in another city and had moved back to Miami specifically because she had realized she wanted to reconnect with Ryan and potentially rebuild their relationship. The messages showed that Charlotte had been testing the waters to see if Ryan was genuinely committed to marrying me, or if there was still a possibility for them to get back together. She had been deliberately inserting herself back into his life, reaching out to his family members, attending professional events where she knew he would be present, and gradually rebuilding the social connections that would make it easy for them to slip back into a romantic relationship. What was even more disturbing was discovering that Ryan had been encouraging this behavior and actively participating in Charlotte's plan to reintegrate herself into his life. He had been meeting with her regularly, spending time alone with her under the guise of catching up as old friends, and even helping her find housing and job opportunities in Miami. He had essentially been rebuilding a relationship with his ex-girlfriend while planning a wedding with me. The timeline revealed in their messages showed that Ryan's insistence on inviting Charlotte to our wedding was part of a larger plan they had developed together. Charlotte wanted to attend the wedding to evaluate whether Ryan was truly committed to me and to potentially disrupt the ceremony if she decided she wanted him back. Ryan was using the wedding invitation as a way to keep Charlotte involved in his life and to signal to her that their relationship was still more important to him than his commitment to me. Even more shocking, I found messages where they discussed their physical relationship, which had clearly continued throughout my engagement to Ryan. They had been meeting regularly for what they euphemistically called catching up, but which obviously involved physical intimacy. Charlotte had even sent Ryan photos that were clearly taken in hotel rooms, and Ryan had responded with messages that left no doubt about the sexual nature of their ongoing relationship. Reading these messages felt like being hit by a truck repeatedly. Every loving gesture Ryan had made toward me over the past 5 years suddenly felt like a lie. Every time he had told me he loved me, every future plan we had made together, every intimate moment we had shared, all of it had been happening while he was maintaining an active romantic and sexual relationship with another woman. The level of deception was staggering. Ryan hadn't just been unfaithful to me. He had been living a completely double life, maintaining 2 separate romantic relationships simultaneously, and lying to me every single day about the most basic facts of his current emotional reality. The most humiliating discovery was yet to come. As I continued investigating Ryan's deception, I realized that I hadn't been the only one who was unaware of what was really happening. Charlotte's social media posts and the messages between her and Ryan revealed that numerous people in our social circle had been aware of their ongoing relationship and had been actively helping them maintain their deception. Several of Ryan's medical colleagues, friends from his residency program, and even some family members had known about his continued relationship with Charlotte and had been providing cover stories for their meetings, helping them coordinate their schedules, and even serving as alibis when Ryan lied to me about his whereabouts. The level of coordination required to maintain this deception was absolutely staggering. What made this discovery even more painful was realizing that some of these same people had been involved in our wedding planning, offering to help with various arrangements and expressing excitement about our upcoming marriage. They had been smiling to my face, participating in engagement parties and bridal showers, and acting supportive of our relationship, all while knowing that Ryan was actively cheating on me and planning to potentially leave me for his ex-girlfriend. Also discovered that Charlotte had been present at several events where I was also present, without me knowing who she was. Ryan had introduced her to me at medical conferences, professional networking events, and even social gatherings as just a colleague or old friend, and I had unknowingly made polite conversation with the woman who was sleeping with my fiancé. The level of humiliation I felt remembering those interactions was almost unbearable. Looking back through photos from various events over the past 8 months, I could now identify Charlotte in the background of several pictures, sometimes even standing close to Ryan in ways that should have been obvious red flags if I had known who she was. She had been hiding in plain sight, attending events in our social circle, and I had been completely oblivious to her presence and significance. The messages between Ryan and Charlotte revealed that they found my obliviousness amusing and somewhat pathetic. They had inside jokes about how easy it was to maintain their deception, how naive I was about what was happening right in front of me, and how simple it had been to manipulate me into believing that Ryan was completely committed to our relationship. Even worse, I discovered that they had been making plans for after our wedding. Charlotte was planning to object during the ceremony if she decided she wanted Ryan back, and Ryan had promised her that he would leave me at the altar if she gave him the signal that she was ready to commit to their relationship again. The final, devastating discovery came when I found a series of messages between Ryan and Charlotte from just 2 weeks before I discovered their ongoing relationship. Charlotte had been experiencing some health issues and had gone to see a doctor, and the messages revealed that she suspected she might be pregnant. The timeline of Charlotte's possible pregnancy coincided exactly with a period when Ryan had been particularly distant and preoccupied, claiming he was stressed about work and wedding planning. Now I understood that he had actually been dealing with the possibility that his ex-girlfriend might be carrying his child while he was planning to marry me in less than 4 months. The messages showed Ryan's panic about the situation, his concern about how a pregnancy would affect both his relationship with me and his future plans with Charlotte, and his desperate attempts to figure out how to handle the situation without destroying both relationships. Charlotte's messages revealed her own confusion about what she wanted to do, whether she wanted to have Ryan's child, and how this development might change their plans for the future. What was most shocking was that neither Ryan nor Charlotte seemed to consider how the situation might affect me or whether I deserved to know the truth about what was happening. Their entire conversation was focused on protecting themselves and their relationship, with no concern whatsoever for my well-being, my right to make informed decisions about my own life, or the fact that I was about to legally and financially bind myself to a man who might have fathered a child with another woman. The pregnancy scare had apparently been a false alarm, but the messages revealed that the experience had forced both Ryan and Charlotte to confront their true feelings about their relationship and their future together. Charlotte had realized that she definitely wanted to be with Ryan and was ready to commit to rebuilding their relationship. And Ryan had admitted that he had never stopped loving her and had only proposed to me because he thought she was permanently out of his life. Their most recent messages, sent just days before I discovered everything, showed them making concrete plans to end Ryan's relationship with me after our wedding. They had decided that it would be less complicated for Ryan to go through with the marriage and then seek a divorce within the first year, rather than canceling the wedding and dealing with the immediate social and professional consequences of ending our engagement. Reading these messages was like discovering that my entire life had been a lie, that the man I loved had never actually existed, and that I had been nothing more than a convenient placeholder while he waited for his real love to become available again. Armed with overwhelming evidence of Ryan's deception and betrayal, I had to decide how to handle the situation. Part of me wanted to confront him immediately, but I knew that would give him the opportunity to manipulate me, destroy evidence, or somehow turn the situation around to make me seem like the unreasonable one. Instead, I decided to expose everything, publicly at our engagement party, which was scheduled for the weekend before our wedding. I wanted to reveal the truth in front of both our families and our closest friends, so that Ryan wouldn't be able to control the narrative or convince people that I was having some kind of emotional breakdown. I spent several days preparing for this confrontation, printing out the most damaging messages, creating a timeline of Ryan's deception, and organizing all the evidence I had collected. I also reached out to a few of my closest friends and family members, asking them to arrive early at the engagement party because I had something important to share before the official celebration began. When Ryan arrived at the venue for our engagement party, he found both our families and our wedding party already assembled. I had prepared a presentation that included printed copies of his messages with Charlotte, screenshots of her social media posts that contradicted his stories about their relationship, and a detailed timeline showing how he had been living a double life throughout our entire relationship. I started by thanking everyone for being there to celebrate what they thought was going to be our upcoming marriage. Then I explained that I had recently discovered some information about Ryan that I felt everyone needed to know before we proceeded with the wedding ceremony. As I presented the evidence of Ryan's ongoing relationship with Charlotte, the room became completely silent. Ryan initially tried to deny everything, claiming that I had misunderstood innocent messages between old friends and that I was having some kind of pre-wedding emotional crisis that was causing me to see threats that didn't actually exist. But the evidence was too overwhelming and too detailed for anyone to dismiss or explain away. The messages were explicit about the sexual nature of their ongoing relationship. The timeline was clear and undeniable, and the level of deception was impossible to rationalize as anything other than deliberate betrayal. My parents were devastated, not just because their future son-in-law had been lying to them for years, but because they felt responsible for encouraging me to marry him and for not seeing through his deception. Ryan's own family seemed shocked but not entirely surprised, and I got the impression that some of them had suspected something was wrong, but hadn't known how to address it without causing family drama. The most satisfying moment came when Charlotte herself showed up at the venue. Ryan had apparently texted her during my presentation, asking her to come help him deal with what he described as my crazy accusations and emotional instability. When she walked into the room and saw all the evidence of their relationship laid out for everyone to see, her face went completely white. The aftermath of exposing Ryan's betrayal was both liberating and devastating. Our wedding was obviously canceled immediately, and I had to deal with the practical and emotional fallout of ending a 5-year relationship just 1 week before what was supposed to be the most important day of my life. Ryan's reaction to being exposed revealed his true character in ways that I had never seen before. Instead of showing any remorse, apologizing for his deception, or taking responsibility for the pain he had caused, he became angry and defensive. He accused me of violating his privacy by going through his personal messages, claimed that I had no right to air our private relationship issues in front of our families, and insisted that everyone was overreacting to what he characterized as normal relationship complications. He tried to convince people that his relationship with Charlotte was just a complicated friendship that had gotten out of hand, and that he had been planning to end their contact after our wedding. He claimed that he truly loved me and wanted to make our marriage work, and that exposing everything publicly had destroyed any chance we might have had to work through our problems privately. But everyone who had seen the evidence knew that Ryan's explanations were lies. The messages clearly showed a deliberate, ongoing romantic relationship that had continued throughout our entire engagement, and his planning to continue the deception, even after our wedding, made it impossible for anyone to believe that he was genuinely committed to me. The personal and professional consequences for Ryan were significant and immediate. Word spread quickly through Miami's medical community about what he had done, and his reputation for integrity and trustworthiness was permanently damaged. Several professional opportunities that he had been pursuing fell through, and his relationships with colleagues who had trusted him became strained and awkward. Interestingly, Ryan's relationship with Charlotte didn't survive the public exposure of their deception either. Once their secret was out, and there was no longer any thrill or excitement associated with their hidden relationship, their dynamic completely changed. Charlotte had enjoyed being the secret woman who knew she was Ryan's true choice, but she had no interest in being publicly associated with someone who was now known throughout their social circle as a manipulative cheater who was capable of elaborate, long-term deception. For me, the healing process has been long and difficult, but ultimately transformative. I had to rebuild my ability to trust my own judgment and my faith in relationships in general. The discovery that so many people had known about Ryan's deception and had said nothing made me question all of my friendships and professional relationships, and forced me to establish much clearer boundaries about what kind of behavior I would and wouldn't accept from people in my life. But ultimately, I'm incredibly grateful that I discovered the truth before marrying Ryan. The thought of being legally and financially bound to someone who was capable of such systematic long-term deception is terrifying. I can't imagine how much more difficult and expensive it would have been to extract myself from his manipulation if we had been legally married and had shared financial obligations. Looking back now, I can see red flags that I missed or dismissed during our relationship. Ryan's reluctance to discuss his past relationships in detail, his defensive reactions when I asked innocent questions about his history, his insistence on maintaining strict privacy around his phone and computer, and his tendency to become angry, rather than understanding when I expressed concerns about anything, should have worried me much more than they did. The experience taught me that sometimes the people we love most are capable of betraying us in ways we never thought possible, and that trusting our instincts when something feels wrong is infinitely more important than maintaining peace in a relationship or avoiding difficult conversations. So here's my question for all of you, and I genuinely want your honest opinion, because I still sometimes wonder if I handled this correctly. Was I the asshole for going through Ryan's private messages instead of just trusting him when he said Charlotte was just a friend? Should I have confronted him privately about my concerns instead of exposing everything publicly in front of our families? Or do you think I did the right thing by protecting myself and potentially protecting Ryan's future victims from his pattern of deception and manipulation? I really want to know what you think, because even now, almost a year later, I sometimes question whether I was too harsh, too controlling, or too unwilling to give him a chance to explain himself privately. Please let me know in the comments what you would have done in my situation and whether you think my actions were justified given what I discovered. Don't forget to subscribe if you want to hear more real stories like this one. And make sure to check out my next video where I'll be sharing another relationship story that will definitely make you question everything you think you know about trust, love, and the people we choose to build our lives with.